Picture this. It's 3:15 in the morning. The ER is chaos, overdoses, violence, human suffering everywhere. Then the room goes silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that comes from fear. A man walks in carrying his unconscious mother, flanked by two men who look like they've buried bodies. Everyone steps back. Everyone except one exhausted doctor who steps forward and says, "This way." In that moment, Dr. Miranda Penson had no idea she'd just met the man who would turn her entire world upside down. Han Kyouong, suspected crime boss, feared by everyone, undone by one woman's refusal to be afraid. This is their story. A love built on honesty, danger, and the choice to stand together when everything says run. And I promise you, the way this unfolds, you won't see it coming. The fluorescent lights of County General's emergency room hummed with the same relentless energy that had sustained Dr. Miranda Penson through the last 16 hours. At 3:15 a.m., the ER was a war zone. Bay 3 held a teenager overdosing on fentanyl. Bay 5 contained the aftermath of a domestic dispute turned violent, and the waiting room overflowed with the usual parade of human suffering that defined the graveyard shift. Miranda moved through it all with the mechanical precision of exhaustion, her dark curls pulled back in a bun that had given up any pretense of neatness hours ago. The coffee in her system had stopped working around midnight, but muscle memory and medical training carried her forward. She was reviewing labs for a sepsis patient when the waiting room fell silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that came from collective fear. Miranda looked up. Through the glass partition separating the ER from the waiting area, she watched people shrink back in their plastic chairs. The security guard near the entrance had gone pale, his hand hovering near his radio, but not pressing the button. Then he entered. Han Kyouong moved through the automatic doors like winter personified. Mid-30s, expensive charcoal suit darkened by rain, face carved from stone and exhaustion. Two men flanked him, identical in their stillness and their danger. But it was the elderly woman cradled in Han's arms that transformed him from predator to desperate son. Her head lolled against his chest, her face gray, her breathing shallow. "She needs help." His voice cut through the ambient chaos, precise and commanding. "Now." The intake nurse stammered something about triage protocol. The security guard looked anywhere but at Han. In the span of 3 seconds, Miranda watched an entire room of people choose cowardice. She chose differently. Trauma 3. Miranda stepped forward, gesturing to the nearest open bay. "This way." Han's eyes found her, dark, assessing, surprised. Then he followed. Inside Trauma 3, Miranda snapped into the familiar rhythm of emergency medicine. The elderly woman, Korean, approximately 70, well-dressed despite her condition, was barely responsive. Miranda barked orders to the nursing staff as she examined her patient. Blood pressure, 210/130 and rising. Pupils, left sluggish, right reactive. Hypertensive crisis with neurological involvement. Possible stroke. Han stood at the foot of the bed, immovable as a mountain, his presence filling the room and interfering with her work. One of his men hovered in the corner, hand inside his jacket in a way that made Miranda's spine tighten. "Get out." Miranda didn't look up from checking pupillary response. "All of you. I'm not leaving her." Han's voice carried no room for negotiation. Miranda straightened, meeting his gaze with 16 hours of exhaustion and zero patience. "Then watch your mother die while you play gangster. Your choice." 10 seconds. Something flickered in those dark eyes. Shock, maybe respect, definitely calculation. Then Han stepped back. "Outside. Both of you." The men retreated. Han followed, but slowly, his eyes never leaving his mother's face. Miranda watched him take up position at the observation window, where he would stand, utterly motionless, for the next 3 hours. Before we dive into Miranda and Han's story, quick favor, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from right now. Are you team Love Conquers All or team Run from the Mafia boss? Your support fuels more epic romance stories like this, and I absolutely love connecting with you all from around the globe. Now, grab your snacks, get comfortable, and let's dive into this intense, emotional journey. The work consumed her. IV antihypertensives to bring down the blood pressure without crashing it. Neurological assessments every 15 minutes. A rapid CT scan that showed no hemorrhage. Good news, suggesting a transient ischemic attack rather than a full stroke. The elderly woman, whose name Miranda learned was Sunja, stabilized gradually, her blood pressure coming down into safer ranges, her neurological responses improving. Through it all, Miranda was aware of Han at the window. He never moved, never checked his phone, never looked away from his mother. And when Miranda glanced at his hands, pressed flat against the glass, she saw them trembling. At 6:47 a.m., Miranda stepped into the hallway. Han straightened immediately, his face carefully blank except for his eyes. Those betrayed everything. "She's stable," Miranda said. It was a TIA, a transient ischemic attack, a warning stroke. No permanent damage this time, but her blood pressure is dangerously uncontrolled. She needs to follow up with cardiology, adjust her medications, and monitor this closely. She'll recover. It wasn't a question, but it held one. "Yes, but this is a warning, Mr. Han, just Han." He bowed slightly, formal despite the circumstances. "Thank you, Dr. Penson. I saw your name tag," he added, catching her surprised look. "Thank you for seeing my mother when others wouldn't. I didn't do it for you." "I know." Something that might have been a smile touched his lips, gone before it fully formed. "That's why it matters." He turned to go, then paused. His associate, Dae-jung, stepped forward and held out an envelope. "No." Miranda's voice was flat. "Please, no." She didn't touch it. "I'm a doctor. I did my job. That's all this was." Han studied her for a long moment, then nodded to Dae-jung, who retreated. "Of course. Forgive me." They left. Miranda told herself she was relieved. 20 minutes later, as she was filling out discharge paperwork in the resident lounge, the weight of the envelope in her coat pocket registered. She pulled it out, confused. She hadn't taken it, had she? And opened it. $10,000 in $100 bills. "You've got to be kidding. Me." Miranda was moving before she'd finished the thought, through the ER, toward the parking garage where she'd seen them heading. She caught them at a black SUV that probably cost more than her annual salary. Rain misted down, turning the concrete slick and gray. Han was helping his mother into the back seat, speaking to her in soft Korean, when Miranda's voice cracked across the space between them. "I said no." Han turned, surprise crossing his face as Miranda stormed up to him. "I'm not for sale. I did my job. I don't want your money, your gratitude, or whatever this is supposed to be." She shoved the envelope against his chest. "Take it back." For a moment, they stood there, a black woman in wrinkled scrubs, rain beating on her brown skin and exhausted eyes, and a Korean crime boss in a $5,000 suit, holding an envelope of cash between them like a failed treaty. "It's not payment," Han said quietly. "It's gratitude. There's a difference." "Not to me." She turned and walked away, her heart hammering, half expecting to be stopped or worse. But when she glanced back from the garage entrance, Han was still standing there, envelope in hand, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. At 8:30 a.m., Miranda collapsed on the resident lounge couch next to Tasha, her best friend and fellow second year. "Girl, you look like death took a shift. Tasha said, not looking up from her phone. 16 hours. I'm dead and just haven't realized it yet. I heard about your VIP patient. Guy with the scary entourage. Miranda's eyes opened. You know him? Know of him. Tasha's voice dropped. Han Kyouong supposedly runs the Baekdu syndicate. Korean organized crime, controls half the underground in the city. Drugs, gambling, protection, the works. She finally looked at Miranda. You okay? Fine. He was just worried about his mother. They're always worried about their mothers. Still doesn't make them safe. Tasha squeezed her hand. Stay far away from him, Mia. Don't worry, Miranda said. I have no intention of doing otherwise. At 2 p.m., a florist delivery arrived at the ER nurses' station. 24 white roses, elegant and expensive. The card read, For seeing a son, not a stranger. HK. Miranda threw them away, but she couldn't stop thinking about his hands, shaking against the glass. Over the next 2 weeks, Sunja Han became a regular fixture in Miranda's clinic rotation. The follow-up appointments were routine. Blood pressure checks, medication adjustments, discussing lifestyle changes that Sunja nodded along to but clearly had no intention of implementing. But the appointments themselves were anything but routine. Sunja was warm in a way that felt like being wrapped in a favorite blanket. She asked about Miranda's life with genuine interest, shared stories about her son with obvious pride, and somehow managed to make a 15-minute checkup feel like having tea with your favorite aunt. My Kyouong, he works too hard, Sunja said during the second visit, while Miranda reviewed her blood pressure log. Always working, never sleeping. He needs someone to take care of him. I'm sure he has people for that, Miranda said diplomatically. People, yes, but not the right person. Sunja's eyes twinkled. He needs someone strong, someone who doesn't scare easy, someone like you. Miranda felt heat rise in her cheeks. Mrs. Han? Sunja, please. We're friends now. And somehow they were. What Miranda couldn't ignore was Han himself. He came to every appointment, arriving early, waiting outside the clinic in the hallway. Their interactions were brief. Miranda would step out to give updates. He would thank her formally, and they would part. But something crackled in the air between them, an awareness, a pull. Miranda noticed things. He never touched his phone when his mother was around. He remembered details Miranda had mentioned in passing. She'd complained about the hospital coffee once, and the next visit there was a thermos of expensive dark roast waiting for her at the nurse's station. He looked exhausted in a way that went bone deep, the kind of tired that came from carrying impossible weight. And he watched her. Not obviously, not threateningly, but with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness every time she felt his gaze. Week 3 brought the prescription incident. Sunja called the clinic in a flutter, having forgotten her blood pressure medication at the hospital during her last visit. Miranda, finishing a night shift at 2 a.m., told her she'd leave it at the pharmacy window for pickup. Han came instead. My mother is already asleep, he explained when Miranda met him in the hospital's 24-hour pharmacy area. I didn't want to wake her. Right, because you're such a considerate son. Miranda handed over the prescription bag. I try to be. They should have parted there. Instead, Miranda heard herself say, Have you eaten? Han's surprise was genuine. No. The cafeteria's still open. Their coffee is terrible, but the vending machine has decent chips. 5 minutes later, they sat across from each other at a table by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the sleeping city. The cafeteria was empty, except for a janitor mopping in the far corner. Rain streaked down the glass, turning the city lights into watercolor smears. Why did you become a doctor? Han asked, pulling Miranda from her exhausted daze. To fix what's broken, she said automatically, then stopped. The late hour and bone-deep tiredness loosened something in her. Maybe to prove I could. My dad left when I was 8. My mom worked 3 jobs. I was going to be someone who stayed, who helped, who mattered. And do you? Fix what's broken. Miranda considered him over the rim of her terrible coffee. Depends on whether it wants to be fixed. The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Han's lips curved, barely, but it transformed his face from stone to something human, something beautiful in its vulnerability. My mother came to this country with nothing, he said quietly. She worked 3 jobs too, cleaning offices, working factory lines, doing alterations in a basement shop. She gave me everything, piano lessons, private school, a future. His hands wrapped around his untouched coffee cup. She doesn't know what I've become, what I've had to do to protect everything she built. I'll do anything to keep it that way. Miranda saw it then, clear as an X-ray, the love, the guilt, the cage he'd constructed around himself with bars made of loyalty and blood. You don't have to tell me what you do, she said. I don't think I want to know. I know what you've heard about me. It's probably all true. Probably. Miranda met his gaze. But right now, in this moment, you're just a man who loves his mother. That's the truth I'm choosing to see. Something shifted in Han's expression, a wall crumbling brick by brick. Outside, the rain intensified, but inside this bubble of fluorescent light and honesty, Miranda felt warm for the first time in months. He walked her to her car as the sun began to color the eastern sky pink and gold. In the parking garage, standing by her ancient Honda, Han said, "Can I see you again? Not as a doctor." Every piece of common sense Miranda possessed screamed at her to say no. He was dangerous. He was criminal. He was exactly the kind of complication she couldn't afford. "You know where I work," she heard herself say instead. Han's smile, when it came, was like sunrise. What followed was strange and thrilling and undeniably dangerous. Han appeared after her shifts with food from 24-hour diners, bulgogi and kimchi from the Korean place on 5th. Soul food from the restaurant near her apartment, once an entire pizza, because Miranda had mentioned craving it. They talked in his car, which she realized was bulletproof when she noticed the thickness of the windows, about everything except his work. He was smarter than she'd expected. Well-read, thoughtful, with a dark sense of humor that caught her off guard. He loved philosophy, particularly Camus and the concept of absurdism. He admitted one night that he hated violence but accepted its necessity like a farmer accepted bad weather. Regrettable, but inevitable. "I've never had a relationship that wasn't transactional," he told her during week 5. "Power, loyalty, fear, those I understand. But this," he gestured between them, "I don't know what this is." "It's called getting to know someone," Miranda said. "Normal people do it all the time." "I'm not normal people." "No," Miranda agreed. "You're really not." The first kiss happened that same night in the hospital parking garage after a brutal shift where Miranda had lost a patient, an 8-year-old girl with leukemia who'd coded despite everything they'd tried. Miranda made it to her car before the tears came, hot and desperate and full of rage at the unfairness of it all. Han was there suddenly, pulling her into his arms, holding her while she cried against his expensive shirt. He didn't say it would be okay. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just held her, solid and real, until the storm passed. But there was darkness there too, a carefully controlled violence that thrilled and frightened her in equal measure. Miranda knew she was falling. Miranda knew it was dangerous. Miranda stopped caring. 2 months in, Sunja had another health scare. Elevated blood pressure during a routine check that required monitoring. Miranda was technically off duty, but rushed in anyway. While adjusting Sunja's IV in the observation unit, Miranda heard Han's voice from the hallway, speaking in Korean on his phone. Even without understanding the words, Miranda recognized the tone. Cold, commanding, threatening. 내일까지 돈을 갚지 않으면 내 가족이 대가를 치를 것이다. If you don't repay by tomorrow, your family will pay the price. Miranda's hands stilled on the IV line. Through the open door, she could see Han, see the crime boss, the predator, the man who lived in a world of blood and fear. It was different from knowing it intellectually. This was visceral, real, undeniable. That night at her apartment, Miranda confronted him. I need the truth. All of it. Han stood by her window, looking out at the city lights. You already know. I know rumors. I know suspicions. I need to hear it from you. So he told her. The Baekdu syndicate, the territory wars, the protection rackets and gambling operations, the violence, ordered and enacted. He told her about the first person he'd killed, about the necessity that had become routine, about the blood that never quite washed away. I've killed people, Miranda. Not ordered it, done it myself. I'm not a good man playing bad. This is who I am. Miranda felt something crack inside her chest. Do you want out? There is no out. Only death or prison. Then why start this with me? Why risk... She gestured helplessly. Why risk me? Han turned from the window, his face raw with emotion. Because for the first time in my life, I wanted something that wasn't about survival or power. I wanted you. I still want you. But I understand if you... I need time to think. It was the hardest thing she'd ever said. Han nodded, his face closing off like shutters slamming down. Of course. Take all the time you need. He left. Miranda sat in the dark and tried to figure out if love was supposed to hurt this much. The bomb was discovered at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Sunja's physical therapy center, a small clinic in Koreatown where she'd been going twice weekly for her recovery, was evacuated after a janitor found the device in a supply closet. The bomb squad disarmed it. No one was hurt. But the message was clear. Han found out at 4:15 p.m. By 4:47 p.m., he was staring at surveillance photos spread across his desk, photos of Miranda leaving her apartment, walking to her car, entering the hospital, photos taken over the last 2 weeks by the Songdo crew, a rival faction making a play for Baekdu territory. They knew about her, and they'd just shown exactly what they were willing to do. Dae-jung stood silent in the corner while Han studied the photos, his hands absolutely steady now, the way they always became when violence was necessary. Options? Han asked. We hit them back, hard, make it clear that targeting family is... They'll escalate. Han's voice was flat. They'll go after her directly next time. They've probably already positioned people near her apartment, her hospital. So we protect her. Round-the-clock security. Safe house, whatever it takes. Han looked at the photo of Miranda smiling, taken through a telephoto lens as she walked to her car after a shift. In the image, she looked happy, free, alive. No, he said quietly. I end it. Cleanly. Before she gets hurt. Kyouong. I've made my decision. The disappearance was surgical. Han changed his number. Stopped coming to appointments, had Dae-jung handle all of Sunja's medical coordination, with instructions to avoid Miranda specifically. He didn't explain, didn't debate, didn't give Miranda a chance to argue. For 2 weeks, Miranda existed in a strange limbo of hurt and confusion. Sunja asked what had happened. Miranda had no answer. She called his old number and got nothing. She even tried to ask Dae-jung when he came for a prescription pickup, but the man just shook his head apologetically and said Han was dealing with business. Miranda told herself she was angry. Mostly, she was heartbroken. Then, on day 15, Miranda received an email notification from her loan servicer. Her student loans, $180,000 in debt that had been crushing her since medical school, had been paid in full. Anonymous payment. Processed that morning. Miranda knew immediately. She was furious. This wasn't love. It was guilt money. It was control. It was Han deciding what was best for her without giving her a choice, reducing their relationship to a transaction he could close with cash. Miranda pulled up Sunja's contact information from the medical records system. Technically a HIPAA violation, but she was past caring, and drove to the address listed. Sunja answered the door in a cardigan and slippers, took one look at Miranda's face, and ushered her inside. He ended it, Miranda said without preamble. No explanation, no conversation, just gone. And then he paid off my student loans like I'm some kind of... She stopped, breathing hard, furious tears threatening. He thinks he's protecting you. Sunja's voice was gentle. He's really just afraid. Afraid of what? Of losing you, of breaking your heart. My son has lost many things in his life, Dr. Penson. It's made him believe that loving something means it will be taken away. So he took himself away first. Miranda's laugh was bitter. That's not protection, that's cowardice. Sunja studied her for a long moment, then wrote an address on a piece of paper. Show him the difference. The nightclub was closed at 4 p.m., but the door was unlocked. Miranda climbed the stairs to the second floor, where Dae-jung waited with an expression that might have been sympathy. She called ahead, he said. He's in his office, last door on the left. Miranda found Han behind a massive desk, reviewing papers with the same intensity he brought to everything. He looked up as she entered, shock registering before his expression shuttered. You shouldn't be here. You don't get to decide that. Miranda threw the loan documentation on his desk. You don't get to make me a victim or a transaction. I was trying to help. I didn't ask you to save me. I asked you to love me. There's a difference. Loving you means keeping you alive. Han stood, his control fracturing. The Songdo crew planted a bomb in my mother's therapy center. They have surveillance photos of you. They know who you are, where you live, where you work. Loving you has painted a target on your back, and I can't. So you made the decision for both of us. Miranda's voice was sharp. You decided I was too weak or too stupid to understand the risk and choose for myself. That's not... Yes, it is. She moved closer, her eyes burning. I know what you are. I know the danger, and I'm still here. I'm still choosing you. But you have to let me choose, Han. You have to trust me enough to stand beside you instead of pushing me away. I can't protect you. The words came out broken, desperate. Everyone I love either leaves or dies. I've spent my entire life losing people, and I can't survive losing you. Then don't push me away, Miranda said softly, her anger transmuting into something more painful. That's the only way you lose me. Han stood there, this powerful man who commanded fear and loyalty with equal ease, and Miranda watched him shatter. He reached for her, and she stepped into his arms, holding him while he buried his face in her hair and shook with the effort of keeping himself together. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I know. They talked through the night. Han explained the situation with Songdo, the territory dispute, the retaliation, the ongoing threat that wouldn't disappear just because they wanted it to. Miranda listened, asked questions, and then set her terms. I won't live in a cage, she said. I need my work, my life, my independence. But I'll take reasonable precautions. Security, Han said. Discreet but present. Someone watching your building, your route to work, just until this is resolved. Fine, but I drive myself. I choose my schedule. You don't get to reorganize my life. Agreed. And I'm not involved in your business. I won't clean your blood money or pretend what you do is legitimate. But I'm not leaving you either. Han pulled her closer. That's all I'm asking. Miranda looked up at him. And you talk to me. When things get dangerous, when decisions need to be made, you talk to me. No more disappearing acts. I promise. He kissed her forehead. I'll probably fail sometimes. I've spent too long making decisions alone, but I'll try. That's all I need. 6 months later, Miranda's apartment had transformed in subtle ways. Better locks on the doors, Han's doing, photos of Sunja on the fridge. Miranda's choice, a spare set of Han's clothes in the closet, their compromise. It was early evening, and Miranda was attempting to cook bulgogi with mixed results. Han, surprisingly competent in the kitchen, was helping without taking over, a skill he'd learned through conscious effort. "I think you're supposed to marinate it longer," he said, watching her poke at the meat with a spatula. "The recipe said 30 minutes. The recipe is wrong." "You're wrong." Sunja, visiting for dinner, laughed from the living room. "You two sound like an old married couple." They exchanged a look, complicated, private, full of possibility. After dinner, Sunja hugged them both and left, still blissfully unaware of her son's real occupation, a mercy they both protected fiercely. Han and Miranda stood on the balcony, the city glittering below them like a field of stars. "Do you ever regret it?" Han asked. "Choosing this?" Miranda leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. "Every relationship is a risk. At least ours is honest." "I love you." Han's voice was rough. "I don't say it enough." "You show it. That's better." He turned her to face him, cupping her face in his hands, those hands that had held weapons and made violence, but now held her with exquisite gentleness. The kiss was slow, sweet, a promise renewed. From the street below, someone honked. A police siren wailed in the distance. The city breathed its endless rhythm, beautiful and dangerous, full of shadows and light. Miranda pulled back, looking at the man who'd crashed into her life carrying his mother, and fear, who'd shown her that love wasn't about safety, but about choice. "Come on," she said, tugging him inside. "The bulgogi's burning." Han laughed, a real laugh, unguarded and genuine. They went inside together, leaving the balcony door open to the night, to the city, to the life they'd chosen despite everything. The city lights glittered, the shadows remained. But in that small apartment, two people who'd found each other in darkness chose to stay, choosing truth over fairy tales, courage over safety, love over fear. And every morning, they chose it again. If this story hit you in the feels, hit that like button and subscribe. Because trust me, the next romance is even more dangerous. Drop a heart in the comments if you choose love over safety, every single time. Until next time, remember, the best love stories aren't about finding safety. They're about finding someone worth facing the danger with. I'll see you in the next one.